If you don't do what I say, we're getting divorced, he threatened, thrusting the papers into my hands. I knew this moment would come sooner or later. Fine. Let's get a divorce, I replied calmly. What? He blurted out, taken aback. I started filling out the forms right in front of him. All right, I'll fight it, I said, my voice steady. He stared at me in disbelief, as if he hadn't expected me to actually go through with it. You don't understand, he muttered. Without me, you'll be all alone. Sure, I'll be alone, I said, unfazed. Is that all you wanted to say? Because I'm busy packing. Packing? To move out, he stammered. Of course. We're getting divorced, so I'm leaving. The timing couldn't be better. My name is Sarah. A few years ago, I married my husband Jason. We don't have children, and both of us are busy with our careers. My parents passed away in an accident during my first year of work, leaving me to face life on my own. When Jason and I got married, I was so grateful. I longed to build a family with him and dreamed of having 2 children, imagining a bright future together. Reality turned out to be much different. After our wedding, Jason's attitude slowly grew cold. Sarah, if I ever leave, you'll be all alone again, he'd say during even the smallest arguments. He knew my vulnerabilities and used them against me, sparking constant fights. He often complained about my housework, picking at the smallest things. Stir-fried vegetables for dinner? He'd scoff. This is food for old people. Didn't I call you earlier to ask what you wanted for dinner? You said, whatever. Yes, but I still think a good wife should figure out what her husband wants and make it. I was craving pala tonight. Then why didn't you say so? You expect me to just know without asking. No matter what you cook, I'd still have something to complain about. What? What did you just say? I work just as hard as you do, and I'm the only one handling all the housework. Don't start with that. Before we got married, you said you enjoyed doing housework. I do enjoy it, but when you constantly criticize everything I do, it makes me not want to do it anymore. I see. What do you mean by that? Oh, nothing. Just thought you were getting a bit cheeky. Cheeky? If that's what you think, it means you don't respect me. I don't like that about you either. Always overanalyzing. I don't want a wife who talks down to me like this. Here we go again. Next, you'll probably remind me that I'm all alone in the world. And right on cue, Jason added his usual line. Well, maybe having kids will fix that loneliness. Maybe it's time we start a family. Jason always brings this up after every argument. When we first got married, I was eager to start a family right away. But the kind man I had married soon disappeared, replaced by someone who constantly complains. Now the idea of having children with him fills me with hesitation. It's true that Jason is my only family now, but before marrying him, I lived alone and managed just fine. I have enough money to support myself and could go back to that life if needed. Sometimes the thought of returning to solitude seems better than enduring Jason's threats. If we had a child, I fear I would spend my life enduring his abuse, and he would likely direct that abuse at me in front of our child. I can't shake this fear, and it leaves me feeling stuck. Jason doesn't like my reluctance, but he doesn't understand my reasons either. Before we got married, you were eager to have kids right away, so why are you now so hesitant? Isn't this a bit deceitful? If that's the case, why don't you make me feel more comfortable about having kids? Are you going to keep criticizing my cooking, my housework, and the way I fold clothes even in front of them? I'm not criticizing. I'm just expressing my thoughts. That's just how it sounds to you because you're overly sensitive. Maybe your personality was affected by not having parents during your childhood. What are you talking about? Are you trying to make me look foolish? I'm not making the fool out of you, Jason said with a dismissive grin. The look on Jason's face was clear proof that he was making the fool out of me, and to make matters worse, there was my mother-in-law. Any grandchildren yet? She would ask every time I visited her house. That's right. You should ask her about it too. She's not contributing at all, Jason would say. Sarah, what's going on? My mother-in-law's gaze was piercing. I was at a loss for words. Well, there are issues, my mother-in-law said. Jason, you need to discuss this with Sarah. I do talk to her all the time, but this woman. Don't call her this woman. Just make sure you and Sarah work things out, all right? All right, I understand, Jason replied. My mother-in-law is a quiet person. Since her husband passed away, she has been living alone. She means well, but her constant question, any grandchildren yet, weighs heavily on me. I can see how much she's looking forward to becoming a grandmother, so I can't bring myself to tell her that I'm unsure about staying married to her son because of his personality. I had no choice but to keep my concerns to myself. Then my mother-in-law had an accident. I received a call from Jason and left work early to rush to the hospital. I arrived before he did. I'm sorry for the trouble. How is mother? I'm okay, just a broken leg, she said with a weak smile. Oh my God, you don't need to cry like that, she reassured me, though I couldn't hold back my tears. I'm sorry, I was terrified I might lose you too. I was so worried on the way here. Oh well, I guess Jason didn't tell you. I'm sorry for making you worry and for reminding you of what happened to your parents. This was the first time my mother-in-law and I had a deep conversation. You should head home now, she said gently. But I want to wait for Jason. I'll go home with him, I replied. She sighed. He's not coming, so you might as well go home. That can't be true, I said, not wanting to believe it. I'm his mother. I know, she said firmly. It was disheartening, and unfortunately, she was right. Jason didn't show up even after visiting hours were over. When I returned home, he was lounging on the couch, watching TV. What are you doing? I asked, puzzled. What do you mean? Jason replied, feigning ignorance. You called me to say your mother had an accident today, so why didn't you come to the hospital? Oh, I figured you'd handle it. One person's enough, right? She's still alive, so it's not a huge deal. She's your only mother, I pointed out. Shut up. Just make me something to eat. I'm starving. You haven't eaten. Of course not. Why should I spend my own money when you're cooking? I'm not cooking. I'm going to bed, I said firmly. Don't you dare talk to me like that. If you make me angry, I'll divorce you, you know, Jason threatened. Then go ahead and do it. I was hungry, but Jason's words and actions had irritated me so much that I decided not to cook for him. I stayed in the bathroom, determined not to give in. The next morning he was already gone. From that day on, he never came back, presumably staying at his parents' house. I left him there. After work that day, I hurried to the hospital to see my mother-in-law. I chose not to mention Jason. I didn't want to add to her worries. I made it a point to visit her every day while she was in the hospital. Thank you so much, says Sarah. I know you and Jason aren't getting along, but I really appreciate you being there for me. I'm sorry. You don't need to apologize, I replied softly. I can guess what's been happening. Understand you didn't want to have children, and he must have caused you a lot of distress. I didn't know how to respond to my mother-in-law's insight, so I remained silent. A woman's intuition can be very accurate. He's the one who made you worry about having kids, so it's all right now. I was looking forward to having a grandchild too, and I probably pressured you more than I should have. I'm truly sorry. I'm sorry I couldn't meet your expectations either. As we were talking, the doctor informed us that the treatment would take longer than expected, but she would be discharged soon. Since she lives alone, she'll need assistance until her leg heals. I'm in a position to help, so I arranged to work remotely on a limited basis with my company's approval. When I told my mother-in-law about it, she felt bad that I had to go through this, but I reassured her that it was fine. On the day of her discharge, I picked her up from the hospital and brought her back to her house. The atmosphere was tense, especially with Jason there. He should still be at work at this hour. I was supposed to meet him in the evening. but even though he approached, it felt uncomfortable. My mother-in-law was watching me intently. Actually, Jason and I had a bit of a fight, and he left the house, so today will be the first time we're seeing each other in a while. My mother-in-law looked uneasy. See each other where? This is the only place I can think he might have gone. Her expression grew stern. I understand now. I'm sorry, I said. Why are you apologizing? Jason is your beloved son. I know it must be uncomfortable for you to hear that I've had conflicts with him. No, not at all. He's the type who never bothers to visit me. What? He never came to visit you? No, never. I was shocked. My mother-in-law had been in the hospital for 2 weeks, and he hadn't visited her even once. What, Anne? Well, he's not the sweet boy you might think he is. What do you mean? Sarah, calm down and listen. He doesn't have a key to this place, so he's not here. That means it's fine. I have an idea. Let's discuss what we can do together. Then my mother-in-law surprised me with an unexpected offer. A week later, I found myself back in the house. As I was packing my bags, I heard the front door open. Oh, perfect timing. I wanted to talk to you. I'm busy. How's Mom doing? Why don't you go see her yourself? Ha! You're the one taking care of her, so I don't need to go. Besides, you're supposed to be looking after Mom. If you don't do what I say, we're getting a divorce. He handed me the divorce papers. Had been expecting this sooner or later. All right, then let's get a divorce, I said, filling out the divorce papers right in front of him. Fine, I'll fight for myself, Jason replied, looking taken aback. You don't understand, do you? Without me, you'll be all alone. Yeah, all alone. Is that all you have to say? If so, that's enough. I'm busy preparing to move out. Where are you moving to? What? Isn't it obvious? I'm divorcing you and moving out. The timing is just right. And who will take care of Mom? Don't worry. I'll make sure your mother is taken care of. You're an idiot, you know that. If you stood up for my mom, you'd get your inheritance. When she dies, I'll be the one to inherit everything as her only son. You're not my son anymore. Earned in surprise as my mother-in-law appeared in the doorway. Oh, what are you doing here, Mother? You need nursing care, don't you? I came to help Sarah move out, you idiot. I can manage on my own with these crutches. My real child is Sarah. I don't need someone who's just after my inheritance while I'm still alive. You won't get a thing. I'm divorcing her. That means she won't be entitled to any inheritance. I'm in the process of adopting a child. What? I'm also in the process of making sure you're disqualified from inheriting anything. You won't get a penny of my money. Oh, that's why I wanted kids. I thought if I had children, they'd be entitled to the inheritance. That's why I pushed for having kids as soon as possible. You're hopeless. You're more of an idiot than anyone could imagine. If you have a child, I'll make sure that child is disqualified from inheriting as well. You old. Jason tried to grab my mother-in-law, but I quickly intervened, pushing him aside and taking her by the hand as we left the house. Hey, are you his wife? A strange woman stood in front of our house. Oh, it's you. You're the one he's been having an affair with. What? Well, for now. Did you sign the divorce papers? Please get out of this house as soon as possible. I see. So Jason had dragged this woman into his scheme. I was taken aback by her sudden appearance, but felt no sympathy for Jason's affair. Instead, I was relieved to know I could secure alimony. When Jason showed up, he flinched at the sight of me with his girlfriend. You're the one who made her wait here. So you were having an affair, huh? Thanks for the confirmation. I'll be sure to get my alimony. Jason stood there, dumbfounded as my mother-in-law and I got into the car and drove away. We went straight to the city office and filed the divorce papers. I then pursued alimony from both Jason and his girlfriend, Despite their excuses, their affair was easily exposed through the girlfriend's social media. They transferred large sums of money to me. It turned out the girlfriend was after my mother-in-law's inheritance, and she vanished from Jason's life once she realized he wouldn't inherit anything. It was clear they were both motivated by money. Jason made several attempts to reconcile by visiting my parents-in-law's house, but his mother refused to see him. I blocked his contact information early on, and though he called from unknown numbers a few times, I didn't answer. Since then, my mother-in-law's leg has fully recovered, and she's thriving with no lingering effects. I'm deeply grateful to her for suggesting that I move on. Now, several years later, I'm still enjoying life with my mother-in-law. I'm no longer alone. We've formed a close-knit family, bound not by blood, but by the care we share. I plan to continue living my life with her, as she is like a mother to me. It's unforgivable to take your spouse for granted and treat them poorly. Jason's reasons for wanting children were selfish and misguided, and he will never find happiness. I hope Sarah and her mother find happiness in the future. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our channel. See you in the next one.
That day, I was working from home, staying in my study room since morning. I could hear my husband Josh, whom I had remarried, and his daughter chatting cheerfully. It was the first time I'd heard them talking with such excitement. Out of curiosity, I quietly moved closer to the hallway, trying to listen in. Then I heard something that I couldn't believe.
"It's way more peaceful without that annoying wife around."
Annoying wife? Was he talking about me? Trying to remember the term annoying, I quickly searched my mind for the meaning. I referred to something lowly or disrespectful. Is that really how he saw me? I was reeling from the shock, processing his words. Then my stepdaughter's voice chimed in.
"We still need her for my college fees, though. We can't do without that human ATM.
Human ATM? Were they really calling me that? She was always asking for more allowance and didn't seem to study seriously. Despite that, I had tried my best to support her, believing it was my role as a mother figure. I thought it was just a phase, and she'd settle down eventually. But no, they were using me right from the start. They only needed me for money, without any affection or respect. I turned back as quietly as I could and returned to my room. I started packing my essentials into a suitcase. When they left the house to go out to eat, I took the chance to slip away, leaving the house. It was too late for regrets now. Just because I was lonely didn't mean I wanted to be with anyone. If all they needed was my money, then I had no reason to stay. My name is Emily, and I'm a mid-level accountant. For 15 years, I've worked in accounting, always steady and dedicated. After my first marriage ended, I focused on advancing my career. Even during my toughest times, I stayed committed to my work, knowing it was my lifeline. When I decided to change jobs, I focused solely on accounting positions. Now I work in the finance department of a large pharmaceutical group, doing most of my work remotely. The company specializes in developing medical treatments, even working with overseas clients. Because of this, my salary is a bit higher than average, and I enjoy my work immensely. In fact, my work helped me get through the hardship of my divorce. My first husband, Zach, struggled with alcohol dependency. At first, it seemed like he only drank a bit too much, but over time, it became a daily habit. Zach had unresolved issues from his past, things that my support alone couldn't heal. He needed counseling or even a structured program to help him stop drinking. However, he refused any help. I believe he wasn't ready to make the difficult commitment to recovery. His struggles weren't his fault, but it was painful to live alongside someone going through it. Because I was working full-time, supporting us financially became natural for me. Even after the divorce, I never felt lost because I knew I could rely on my own skills. I eventually transitioned to a better-paying job and grew in my career, and I've become financially stable. At times, I wondered if I was meant to live my life without the need for a family, just focusing on work. Then, I met Josh and his daughter, Lily. Josh was a salesperson at a pharmaceutical company, often visiting our office as part of his job. Though he wasn't very assertive, something about his gentle nature appealed to me. I think it was my nurturing instinct that made me want to support him. Looking back, I realize I'm often drawn to men with vulnerabilities.
"I'm not very efficient at things. I'm doing my best as a single dad to raise Lily, but it's tough."
When we first went out to dinner, Josh shared his struggles with me. He was divorced too, because his ex-wife had been unfaithful. It made sense to me that his daughter would choose to stay with him. Josh was often anxious about his income and worried about Lily's future.
I've been thinking about finding a job with better pay, but I've already switched jobs 4 times.
Although switching jobs isn't necessarily bad, I felt uneasy hearing him say it was a repeated cycle. I wondered if he was taking the time to reflect on what wasn't working. I was worried that if he didn't understand why things weren't working out, he'd end up in the same situation again. Changing environments without personal growth wouldn't bring different results. Job changes are risky if you're not actively learning from each experience. I felt that to increase his income, he needed to grow personally as well. When I asked him what his strengths were, his response was underwhelming.
I'm not sure. I just feel like I keep failing and it's getting discouraging.
Failures are valuable learning experiences. In fact, people who succeed often learn from their mistakes. I shared with Josh that failures are essential for growth, and each setback is a lesson. But he only sighed and folded his arms, clearly uncertain.
But I'd need knowledge first, right?
His reluctance to try before having perfect knowledge made me wonder if he was just making excuses. It became apparent that he had no real desire to make changes or put in the work. I started realizing he was more content with fantasizing about success than actively working toward it. Yet I still thought I could support him if he genuinely wanted to improve. I told him that, even if he struggled in finding a better job, my income would be stable enough to support us. But he interpreted my reassurance differently than I had intended.
Thanks, Emily. Honestly, being an employee doesn't suit me, so this is a relief. I'm not planning to quit now, but it's nice to know I don't have to worry as much about increasing my income.
His response left me feeling a bit uneasy, as if he was placing the financial responsibilities solely on me. Still, I tried to brush it off, thinking he'd eventually find his footing. When we got married, I met Lily for the first time. She scanned me up and down with a critical look before bluntly asking,
So, what exactly do you bring to the table? Good job? Decent salary?
Her words took me aback. After a few seconds of silence, I realized she was basically questioning my worth. I was sweating with embarrassment. Though I didn't consider myself especially attractive or charming, I was taken aback by her bluntness. I started to worry about whether I'd be able to build a relationship with such a straightforward teenager.
Lily, that's rude.
I didn't mean anything by it.
I held back a retort, not wanting to cause conflict on our first meeting.
So, what kind of work do you do, Emily?
Her curiosity surprised me, so I shared my job with her honestly. I hoped my experience might inspire her or give her ideas for her own future. Well, I work in accounting. Do you know what accountants do?
Yeah, like handling expense reports or reimbursements.
That's part of it, but there's a lot more involved. I tried explaining my role in accounting to Lily in simple terms. My responsibilities included handling monthly closings, preparing consolidated reports, and financial strategy. I explained that I manage transactions, prepare reports for the parent company, and create financial strategies. Hoping to make my job sound relevant, I explained how these tasks required analytical and management skills.
So what kind of qualifications do you need for that job?
Well, you need accounting certifications, and if you want to advance, experience in finance or banking is helpful. I added that in accounting, experience matters as much as education. I hoped Josh would gain some appreciation for the expertise my work demanded. Other than that, you need to be able to manage budgets, oversee financial planning, and work with a team. Lily, however, looked completely uninterested. Josh chimed in, adding his own question about my workload and earnings.
That sounds pretty busy. How much do you make doing all that?
For a moment, I almost answered truthfully. I was just shy of a 6-figure salary, and that was my goal to achieve someday. But then I noticed Lily giving a smug look, so I chose to give a vague answer. Let's just say it's a bit above average for an accountant. Lily made a bored noise, glancing at Josh as if they were silently communicating. Watching them interact, I felt like an outsider. I tried to lighten the atmosphere by continuing to explain more about accounting, but my explanations seemed to fall flat. I reminded myself that it was just the beginning, and building a family takes time. I was determined to support both Josh and Lily and be part of their lives. If it came down to it, I could support Lily's education financially if necessary. However, I was unaware then of Josh's actual intentions. It soon became clear that he was planning to rely on my income from the start. And his hope was to put Lily in an expensive private university that accepted students based mostly on tuition. Once we started living together, I began to notice things that troubled me. I noticed that Lily often skipped her tutoring sessions without telling me. One day, the tutoring center even called to inform me that she hadn't shown up. "Hey Lily, what happened with tutoring today?" I knocked on her door, and she replied with a bored tone.
I decided to attend remotely today.
Though the center used to offer remote learning, they had returned to in-person sessions recently. Besides, if she was missing classes, the center wouldn't have reached out to me. I began to worry about her commitment to college prep, wondering if she truly had the motivation. If you're struggling with any subjects, I can help you review if you'd like.
Why would I need help?
I just thought maybe I could help. You might feel more comfortable asking me questions. Lily let out a heavy sigh, clearly irritated.
Look, I don't need any of that. It's kind of weird that you're trying to act all motherly.
My offer wasn't meant to insult her, but she took it the wrong way. I instantly regretted offering. She might already feel pressure or frustration about her studies, and I didn't want to add to it. I quickly apologized, telling her to go at her own pace, but I knew the issue was more serious. Missing tutoring would impact her, especially with college prep programs that move at a fast pace. Without a strong commitment, it would only become harder for Lily to catch up. I wondered if Josh knew about Lily's tendency to skip her tutoring sessions. They seemed to have a close relationship, but perhaps there were things he was unaware of. Josh, can we talk about Lily's studies for a minute?
Sure. What's going on?
Please, don't scold her, but her tutoring center has called a few times. It seems she hasn't been attending regularly.
Yeah. That doesn't surprise me. She's always hated studying.
He sighed, as if it were something he had accepted long ago.
She's got her eye on a private university, you know. One that'll take her as long as we can pay the tuition.
Josh smiled as he said this, as if it were a simple solution. I found this approach troubling. Perhaps Lily didn't feel motivated because she assumed her parents would simply take care of everything. But it didn't feel right to point this out as her stepmother. So I simply nodded and tried to move on from the topic. I returned to my room preparing for an online meeting as part of my remote work. With my new work schedule, I now worked from home twice a week. This arrangement allowed me to spend more time at home and keep an eye on things. It also gave me more opportunities to observe both Josh and Lily's behaviors. Little by little, my earlier worries about their intentions started to resurface. I couldn't shake the feeling that they might be expecting me to fund Lily's entire college tuition. I had no problem supporting her dreams, but I didn't want to be taken advantage of. As the days passed, I started noticing other behaviors that concerned me even more. Sometimes Josh would sleep in on weekdays or return home early in the afternoon. One morning I walked into the living room and was surprised to see him home.
Oh hey, you're here.
Yes, it's my work from home day. Are you off today?
Actually, I took the morning off. I was really tired from a late night of work yesterday.
But as I looked around, I could smell the faint trace of alcohol in the air. It seemed more likely that he'd been out drinking rather than working late. I let it slide, but it became clear that there were more mornings like this than I had noticed before. Josh often talked about how he never seemed to fit in at work, and I had originally thought he was just unlucky. But now I began to suspect it was something else entirely. Perhaps his work habits were part of the problem. And soon I would find out the full extent of what he and Lily had been hiding from me. One morning, I accidentally overslept by about 30 minutes because I hadn't been feeling well. I knew I only needed to be ready for a 10 a.m. online meeting, so I planned to relax a bit before the day started. Half asleep, I could hear voices coming from the living room downstairs. I looked at the clock, and to my surprise, it was already 9 a.m. Why were there voices at this time? Josh should have left for work, and Lily should be at school. I tiptoed down the stairs to listen.
Dad, are you taking the day off again?
Of course. I'm already using up my vacation days. Might as well use them before I quit.
Wait, are you really quitting?
I'll be technically between jobs. Not a slacker, just, taking some time to think.
I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Was he really planning on quitting his job without telling me?
Well, I'm just a student, so I don't have to worry about jobs yet.
They both kept talking casually, as if they had no real responsibilities. It was then that I overheard the words that shattered any illusion I still held about them.
Life's so much more peaceful without the annoying wife around.
Annoying wife? Was he really referring to me that way? I quickly recalled the term, realizing that he was implying I was an inconvenience to him. As I absorbed his words, I felt a mixture of shock and disbelief. Then I heard Lily's voice chime in casually, adding insult to injury.
But we can't have her gone completely. I mean, I still need her around for college expenses, right?
I froze. Did they really think of me as nothing more than an ATM? The notion that a high school student would say that about me was beyond disrespectful. My head spun as I processed what I'd just heard. Could it be that from the beginning they had only seen me as a source of financial support? I began to piece things together, realizing the truth was likely worse than I'd imagined. I carefully stepped back, returning to my room, barely making a sound. I quickly grabbed my largest suitcase and began stuffing it with essentials. Then, when I heard them head out to eat, I seized the opportunity to leave without a word. I knew staying any longer would only continue to drain me emotionally and financially. I had tolerated so much, believing that with time, they would change. But they'd taken my kindness for weakness, and enough was enough. As I walked out, I felt both a weight lifting from me and a pang of sadness. But I was determined not to let their disrespectful view of me define my self-worth. I knew my next steps would involve focusing on rebuilding my life on my own terms. I left my filled-out divorce papers on the desk, knowing that once he saw them, he would understand my resolve. I rented a modest monthly apartment close to my workplace, grateful for a space of my own. Though it was small, the location was convenient, and I had some peace and privacy. The calls started almost immediately. Josh left multiple messages, which I ignored, suspecting he was only calling out of desperation. A month passed without any real contact, though his attempts only increased. I knew he was calling because he was in a difficult situation, not out of affection. He'd seen the divorce papers, which should have been enough to show him I was serious. Then, late at night, my phone began to ring persistently. This time, it was Lily. I imagined the realization hitting them that their ATM was no longer available. But deep down, I didn't feel any sympathy for their situation. They had taken me for granted, thinking they could live off my hard work. At last, around midnight, Josh called again. I sighed, picking up, ready to put an end to this once and for all. It's late, Josh. This is highly inappropriate.
Emily, finally. Where are you?
He sounded genuinely worried, but I knew better. That's not important. Just file the divorce papers, Josh.
What? Divorce? Why? I don't even understand what's going on.
His feigned confusion only fueled my frustration. The time for playing dumb was over, and I wouldn't let his words sway me. You know exactly why. You've said enough.
Look, we need to talk. Lily's planning on attending open house events, and she really wants you there too.
I felt the anger rising as I realized he was trying to involve me financially again. Right, the one for the private college. I heard the entrance cost is steep. Josh hesitated, likely realizing I knew more than he thought.
Well, yes, but you know how important it is for her to be prepared.
He tried to use Lily as a way to manipulate me back, assuming that her needs would make me reconsider. But I couldn't shake the disrespect and disregard they'd shown me. This time, I wouldn't give in to emotional blackmail. Josh, maybe it's time you faced reality. Supporting Lily is your responsibility, not mine. His silence was all the confirmation I needed. This chapter was over, and I finally felt at peace. Days passed with no real response from Josh, except for a few more late-night messages from him and Lily. They clearly didn't understand that I was returning to their lives as a backup plan. I kept ignoring the calls, focused on creating a new life on my terms. But one night, as I was relaxing after work, my phone buzzed with yet another call. This time, I decided to pick up, hoping to settle things once and for all. Josh, what do you need now?
Emily, please. You have to help us out. Lily really needs you.
No, she needs her father to step up, not me. I'm done being your ATM.
But you know things have been tough. I lost my job.
His tone was pleading, but I knew he was only sorry about the lack of financial support. Maybe it's time to find a stable job and take some responsibility.
Can't we just talk this out? I'm willing to try again, really.
No, Josh, the way you and Lily treated me, I don't think there's any going back from that. He fell silent, seemingly out of arguments. I finally felt that my words had hit home.
I guess I never thought it would come to this.
That's because you took me for granted. Both of you did. I hung up, realizing I'd said everything I needed to say. Over time, I stopped checking for messages, knowing there was no need to revisit the past. I started focusing on myself, enjoying the peace that came from knowing I was free from their expectations. Lily eventually dropped out of her university plans and started working part-time. I heard that she'd been struggling with reality, but was learning some valuable lessons about independence. Josh, on the other hand, drifted between jobs, occasionally reaching out for one last favor. I never responded. I had given them enough chances, and it was time for me to move forward. I even adopted a rescue cat, finding joy in the small moments of companionship and comfort it brought. With each day, I found new purpose and contentment, knowing I'd made the right choice. I no longer felt the need to support those who couldn't appreciate or respect me. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly free.